story. Okay, I think we're going to be live on Facebook in a minute, and someone is going to send in the chat the link. So maybe if you want to share this meeting or watch it before after this interview, you can watch it there. We are live on Facebook, in the Voice of the Silence, and I think in Diario Judío too. I hope so.
Yes.
So okay. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Officially, we're going to start this interview. Thank you, Ruth, for being here. Well, Ruth Mermelstein, she's a survivor, a Holocaust survivor, and she has a very interesting story that she wants to tell us. So, so this topic we'll never forget. We will never forget, you know, about the Holocaust and that it happened. Some people they say it didn't happen, but oh, of course it happened, and we have a witness here that it's Ruth. Thank you, Ruth. How are you today?
Fine, thank you. And thank you very much for introducing me. And if you want, I could start talking from the beginning, what happened to me, or maybe you just want to ask certain questions.
But before you start, I want to thank Samantha Rodriguez for all the job she's doing, bringing the information on what happened in the Holocaust and these dark days of human history live to many people, to not to forget what did happen in that days with Voice of Silence, with Diario Judío. And I think it's a very important labor because she's also bringing many young people to hear about these stories, real stories that of real people that really were there. So it's important to hear you, and thank you for being here. And I think many people don't know your history. So I think it's important if you can tell us a little bit about your history before some question. What do you think, Samantha?
Yes, I will ask about her story. The first question I have is, of course, where you were born and how was your childhood?
Well, I was born in a small town in Romania, Sighet. It was made famous by a writer, Elie Wiesel. He was my neighbor. Many of the schools in this country and in other countries, they assigned this book for students to read. The book is called Night, and it's written by Elie Wiesel, and he was my neighbor. And of course, he was very famous. He wrote more than 50 books, and he put my little town on the map. Sighet, Romania. So it was Romania when I was born, but by the 1940, when I was 10 years old, Hungary occupied my little town. Hungary occupied part of Romania, and Hungary was allied with Nazi Germany, so they brought in all the anti-Semitic laws to Hungary just because the Germans demanded that Hungary should do just what they are doing in Germany. Things started to be very bad in our part of Romania, Hungary now, because Jewish people couldn't have business with Christians, and they took away businesses, and we had to give up everything. Right away, they called up all the young men to forced labor from 18 to 26, and they had to work very hard in their civilian clothes and with little food. And by 1941, Hitler also demanded that Hungary should deport the Jews to the killing fields. Hungary wasn't ready yet to deport all the Jews. So they made a new law. They're only going to deport those who are so-called refugees. But they weren't really refugees. For example, I have to talk about my aunts and my uncles and my cousins because they were murdered right in 1941. My mother's younger brother, when he was in his early 20s, he went to Palestine, and he couldn't stand to be separated from the family, so he came back. He got married. He was a successful businessman. He had 3 little children. One night they came for him and took him to the police station because he was away from our town. So even though he was born there, now he's labeled a refugee because he came back. The same thing happened to my mother's younger sister. She got married. She was a beautiful woman, and our small town wasn't big enough for her. So they moved to the second largest city of Romania and were very successful there. They had 2 beautiful children. A little girl, when she was 6 years old, she won the Shirley Temple lookalike. Beautiful children. But before the borders went up between Romania and Hungary in their town still stayed Romanian. They didn't want to be separated from us, so they came back to live in our hometown. And now the same thing happened to them because they didn't live continuously in our town. They were taken away. And this was the first mass murder. They were taking them to the Ukraine. And my grandmother and the rest of the family, we were just very, very unhappy. This happened to us right away in 1941 already. We didn't know what happened to them. Wow. Several months later, a man came back to our hometown and told us what happened. He says they were taken to the Ukraine, marched into the woods, lined up next to a ravine, and shot just because they were born Jews, Jewish people. More than 22,000 people were shot there. This is the first time a mass murder happened where more than 22,000 were shot. That later on, they didn't use the weapons anymore. They found out different things, how to murder more people with less expense in the shortest possible time. Well, life went on for a while, but my grandmother, she was crying always because what happened to them? Nobody wanted to believe that man, that what really happened, that they were shot and murdered in cold blood.
I was going to say that it's terrible. It started in 1940, 1941. This happened, this happened to your family, and obviously it was terrible. Even just because they were Jews, we know all of this, but yes, that will be that must be terrible, that your grandma, she was always crying because of this. And I was going to to ask you, how old were you at that time? When all this started, when the war started.
I was 10 years old. I was 11 when they took away my aunts and uncles and cousins. And when this man came, nobody wanted to believe him that this happened, that they were shot in cold blood and murdered like that. It took him several months. When he came back, people said he's a madman. This cannot happen in the 20th century, that innocent people, healthy, young, beautiful children and men in their 30s should be murdered just because they were born Jews, because this was early. This was in 1941. By 1942, they called up older men. My father was 41 years old, and my mother was pregnant with a sixth child, and he was taken away to forced labor. The forced laborers, they worked practically to death. They had to work summer and winter in their civilian clothes with little food. And when they couldn't work anymore, they were too weak to work. They put them in a big hall, poured gasoline around the building, and put the building on fire with about 600-700 men inside. It so happened that my father still was a little bit strong enough to break out the windows and get out from the burning building. Soldiers were standing around the building and shooting those who were trying to escape, but my father helped two other men, and they escaped from the burning building. And they were hiding there for a while, and then they were crawling slowly into the woods. In the woods, some partisans found them, and the partisans gave them a choice. We can take you now to Russia. This was in the spring of 1944. We can take you now to Russia, and you are going to be safe because Russia is already liberated. 1943, Russia is already liberated from the Germans. We can take you there, and you are going to be safe. But if you want to go back to your hometown, you know that all the Jewish families in Europe are going to be murdered. And my father and the two other men told the partisans, whatever is going to happen to our families is going to happen to us. We want to rejoin our families. So the partisans took them to a hospital in the Ukraine. The Ukraine was also occupied by Hungary at that time. And when they got stronger, it was 3 weeks later, my mother gets a telegram from the government. She should come and pick up my father there. So grandma came to stay with us because we had a baby in the house. And we were so elated when my mother took the train and went to the Ukraine and brought back my father. We were so happy to have him home. Our door was open for a whole year till they took us away. People came from all over to ask, did you see my husband? Did you see my son, my brother? But my father never wanted to tell what really happened to them. He just wanted to give them hope. It wasn't like the first man who came back from the mass murder. He didn't want to tell bad stories. He wanted to just give them hope. You have to have hope. Last time I saw them, they were in good shape. You are going to see them again.
I think it was so brave of your father, you know, that of course he knew the fate of most of the Jews if he returned to his home, but that's so brave, and he loved you so much, and so that's why he returned, right? And I think that, yeah, thank God he returned too, because yeah, he didn't die in that forced labor, but yeah, I know, I think he was so brave for returning to your house and being with you, you know, no mattering what happened next, you know, because maybe you were going to be killed or something. So yeah, I think it was so brave of him. And I want to ask you, yeah, can you tell us a summary of your survival, how you survive, to which concentration camps you were sent, all of this?
Yeah, so when my father came home, things were rough, but still he managed to make a living. And we were sitting down for the Passover Seder. Like usually we celebrate these goblets of wine and singing, and then we opened up the door for the prophet Elijah to come in, and instead of the prophet Elijah, in came our janitor, and he was drunk. He saw the door open, so he came in, and he said, and my father gave him a goblet of wine, and the guy says, "You are good people, don't worry, the war is going to be over in 1 year's time." But nobody prepared us what that 1 year will bring. So right after Passover, yeah, when my father walked the man out, and when he came back in, he says, "You know, when a drunk speaks, he speaks the truth, and believe it or not, to the date of the guy that he said we were going to be liberated, I was liberated. That was April 18, 1940, 43, 44, and April 15 or 16, 1945, I was liberated. But a lot of things happened in between that time. Because right after Passover, we were ghettoized. 3, 4 families moved into a one apartment or one house. Living conditions were quite rough because sanitary conditions, food was very hard to come by. And we stayed in the ghetto for about a month, 5 weeks. And then early one morning, they told us to leave everything behind, just take what we could carry in our hands and line up in the middle of the street. And we were sitting in the middle of the street for practically from early morning to late afternoon. And my little baby sister, who was only 18 months old at that time, she practically got sunstroke because my mother couldn't shield her from the hot sun. So now they marched us to, we were marched late in the afternoon to the first synagogue, but we couldn't get in there because it was already full to the rafters, and we had to march another 5 kilometers to the next synagogue. And by that time, it was also very full and hardly anybody was sleeping. Children were crying and elderly were fainting. It was a very tough time. But early next morning, they chased us out from there, and we had to march down a beautiful boulevard till we got to the train station. And when we got to the train station, we saw there boxcars, 30 to 40 boxcars lined up, and they pushed in 80 to 100 people in the boxcar. They gave us one pail of water and one pail for a toilet. It was very stifling and terrible in the boxcars. Every day the train stopped at a different town, and we emptied a pail of excrements and brought in a pail of water. And we were traveling, and they connected more boxcars with Jewish families. And then at one point it was so stifling and hot and terrible in the boxcars that I was almost fainting. So my father lifted me up to look out the little window to get some fresh air. High up in the boxcar were little windows, and we were riding through a beautiful meadow where we saw beautiful cows, Holstein cows, grazing in the meadow. And my father told me, "Look how those cows are grazing freely in the meadow. One day you are going to be free too. You are a strong girl, and you are going to make it, and you are going to talk about it."
Wow.
Those last words that my father gave me sustained me all through the war. My father had confidence in me that I'm going to make it. I'm a strong girl. And that's why I'm here and talking to you. Yeah, after the train stopped, and after three nights and 4 days, the train finally stops in Auschwitz. We never heard about Auschwitz. So now we arrive in Auschwitz, and the SS men there, first welcoming committee, young men in striped uniforms, told us what to do. Leave everything that you brought with you in the boxcars. We are going to bring it to you later. Elderly people are going to come on buses, and you are going to see them later. Anyway, the SS man, Mengele, the angel of death, was pointing who should go to the left and who should go to the right. We had to line up men in one row, men and boys in one row, young women in another row, a mother with small children in a third row. I was 14 years old. I thought I was still a child, so I clung to my mother, and I wanted to stay with her. But Dr. Mengele thought that maybe I looked strong enough, I could work for a while. So he pushed me to the young woman's side. So my mother's last words said, my older sister, she was almost 2 years older than me, she was already with a young woman. And my mother said to me the last words, try to stay together. So we had a rough time staying together in Auschwitz and in other places too. And we never saw our parents again. Us young women, they marched down to a large building, and there were SS men walking up and down, and they told us to undress. Here we were so shy, we came from small towns, and we had to undress in front of men and strangers, and put our clothes on one corner and our shoes in a different corner. And then for us, those soldiers are SS men who walked up and down. They selected a certain amount of well-developed women. They were going to get tattoos, but the crematoria were working day and night in Auschwitz, and they couldn't take everybody. So most of us Hungarian Jews didn't get the tattoos. I didn't get a tattoo. Our destiny was any day we could be taken to the crematoria, because the crematoria was working so hard, because they brought in maybe 400,000 or 500,000 people in a very short time from Hungary. It was almost the end of the war. As a matter of fact, 2 months later, the Allied forces already landed in Normandy, but here we were in Auschwitz. After we were undressed, we were told to line up single file, and 2 couples were shaving our hair from our head and from the rest of our body. And in our case, they told us to go in and take a shower. Sure enough, it was water. We got no soap, no towels, and we took a cold shower. And when we got out from there, we all got the same dresses, a long gray cotton dress, everybody the same size. We thought this is going to be our nightgown. And then they marched us out from there, and they marched us to a barrack. In the barrack, there were cubicles, 3 rows and rows of 3 tiers of cubicles. And they told us to climb into the cubicles, 8 to 10 girls into a cubicle. If one girl turned over, the rest of us had to turn over. Before we could fall asleep, but the winter in Poland, the nights were very cold and even in the summer, but the days were very hot. And here we were marched out early in the morning before we even could afford, before the sun came up. We had to line up 5 in a row to be counted. Every morning was the same thing. We had to be counted. There was maybe 50,000 women in Birkenau at that time, and we had to stay in line till everybody was counted. First, the couples were counting us. We had to stay 5 in a row, and they made sure that nobody was staying behind in the cubicle who passed out or whatever. And then after several hours, the SS men came around and counted us again. And then we were getting they told us, now you can go to the latrine and wash off. The latrines were long halls with a narrow table in the middle with holes, and everybody had to do their business in front of everybody else. It was very traumatic for us. And of course, it was so chlorinated that you could faint from the chlorination. We had a very rough time in Auschwitz. After we were washed off, no towels, no soap, no paper to wipe us with. Then we had to get back and get breakfast. Breakfast was a bowl of like a chamber pot, a bowl with something that was supposed to be coffee, but it looked more like dirty dishwashing water, and a slice of black bread with a piece of margarine on it, and nothing else. And late afternoon, we were counted again, and we got dinner, which was also a slice of bread, black bread with something that looked like pickled snails, and a bowl of soup that looked like cooked grass. And we had to, 5 girls had to sip from it. The third day, when we were staying so in line to be counted in the morning, all of a sudden I hear Elizabeth, my sister, fainted. Why did she faint? We were separated by the couple, so we couldn't right away be together. But now she was not far away from me, and I heard she fainted. Why did she faint? At home, she was a finicky eater. If my brother put his spoon in her dish, she wasn't going to eat anymore. And now she wasn't going to sip from the same bowl as 5 other women were sipping. I joined up with her. I didn't care if the couples were hitting on us. I said, listen, Elizabeth, you have to eat whatever they give us. We have to live another day. We just have to try to live another day. You have to eat whatever they give us. This went on for quite a while. That we weren't assigned work because they didn't need any workers. We couldn't go back into the camp, into the huts, into the barracks. We just had to stay outside in the dust and the sun beating down on us. And after about 10 days, they asked for volunteers. We are going to get an extra slice of bread if we volunteer to work to build the roads of Auschwitz, which was very tough because we had to be on our knees and no head covering on our shaved head, and working, cutting rocks into perfect little squares and building the roads, putting in the mosaic form in the roads, building it. And we were doing it for 6 weeks, every time doing the same duty after the count. And it was very tough because the sun was beating down on our heads and being on our knees. It was very tough, but it was better than not to do anything. And then we got an extra slice of bread. I always tried to save my slice of bread because I thought I'm going to be more hungry later. But there was a mother and a daughter my age. She said, could you please give that slice of bread to my daughter? She's a growing child. I was very selfish. I said, I'm also a growing child. My mother is not here to look out for me. So anyway, after working like this for 6 weeks, when we came back from the work detail, we had to line up. They're going to select a certain amount of women to go to work someplace else. So all the group who came back, plus another 250, 500 women lined up to be selected. 250 are going to be selected to go to work someplace else. My sister was selected, but I wasn't selected. I wasn't looking strong enough to go to work someplace else. So my sister, those who were selected, they were put in a different barrack. And those who were not selected, we were under lockdown. We couldn't get out anymore till the group that were selected were going to be taken away to work. The next day, my sister comes to the window and looks for me. She was going to say goodbye to me. And I was so selfish, I was crying. I said, I'm only 14 years old. I'm so afraid to die all by myself. And my sister, she had such a soft heart. She would give away the shirt from her back. She made a deal with 2 other sisters. One sister who was out with her, and her other sister was in with me. She said, let your sister bring out the pail of excrements to the latrines. And my sister is going to bring back the empty one because the count always had to be exact. So the other sister went with her sister who was going to work, and my sister came back to be with me. She practically gave up her life at that point because we didn't know what our destiny was going to be. The next day we could have been taken to the crematorium. The crematorium was working day and night. The Nazis were very smart. They were the most educated people in Europe probably, but what they used their education for was how to invent something to murder the most people in the shortest possible time with the least expense. No more bullets, just gassing us and then burning us. The smell in Auschwitz was always horrible because you smelled the burning flesh and you saw this dark smoke, and if you looked up, and it was a terrible time in Auschwitz. But things went on because we wanted to live. We were outside and looking up to heaven and said, "Dear God, where are you? What can you?" Looking down at the chosen people, seeing them how they suffer, I guess he just looked away at that point in Auschwitz. And Auschwitz was a terrible time. So now after those people that were chosen, selected to go to work someplace else, they were taken away out of Auschwitz and they let us out again to work. So we worked another 2 weeks in Auschwitz to build the road. And after we came back from the work detail, we were told again to line up. They're going to select a group of women to go to work someplace else. At this time, I pinched my cheeks to get colors and I walked on my tippy toes. And I was selected and my sister was selected. And they put us in a different barrack because now we were going to go to work someplace else. They selected 250 women. None of us had the tattoos. Those girls who had the tattoos, we were so envious of them because they had good jobs. They could even go take showers. Those with the tattoos, they got kerchiefs on their head and white kerchiefs and red kerchiefs. And they were going to sort the clothes that the people left behind in the gas chambers or the showers, and then the truck and the boxcars. They were the lucky ones. They sometimes found food or other stuff. And I was taking chances, running after them and saying, can you spare something? Do you have a cube of sugar or a piece of toast or something? I was taking my chances, even though the couples were around and beating up on us. Anyway, now we worked another 2 weeks and we had this election and we passed. And they put us in a different barrack with rougher boards, and I got some scabs on my body, on my side. And now we had to go through another selection. We had to undress and walk single file while 2 SS men were looking us over to make sure that we didn't have any blemishes on our body. So my sister, I passed. I had a scab on my side that I covered with my palm. I passed, but my sister didn't have any kind of scabs, but the girl in front of her had quite a lot. And there was such a commotion going on that SS man grabbed my sister and pushed her to the condemned. But a neighbor of ours saw what happened. She grabbed my sister and pushed her back in the line, and she passed because she was clean. They took away our uniform, our nightgown, and sanitized it, and we lay a whole night on a concrete floor. The next morning they gave us back our sanitized dress, and they gave us a half a pint of milk and a half a loaf of bread, and they put us on boxcars. It was a hot August day, and the boxcars, every boxcar had an SS man escorting us, and we had the door open because it was stifling. And the SS man who was in the boxcar, he said, "You are so lucky you got out of Auschwitz alive and not through the chimney." Sure enough, we felt very lucky. We got out of Auschwitz alive and we didn't have to smell the burning flesh and the dark smoke. We were traveling in the boxcars for about 4 or 5 hours, and the train stops in the middle of the woods someplace. Now we are going to get fresh air. We are going to work for IG Farben, ammunition factory owner. And at the beginning, they gave us uniforms, they gave us some better nutrition because they wanted we should be able to produce. It was hard work. I was working in the factory, cleaning grenades, and I got calluses on my hand. Later on, I got smarter about it, try not to get calluses, rather do things for the grannies that should be able to use, whatever. My sister, unfortunately, she got a job to work in the asbestos mines, and working with asbestos, she paid the price, even though she survived. We worked in this place for quite a while, for 3 months, 4 or 5 months. And it was a nice place because the air was always very fresh and we could take hot showers. And we had rooms assigned for us. When we came out from Auschwitz, we thought we came to paradise because now we got rooms for 8 or 12 or 6 people to a room with bunk beds and straw mattresses and blankets. we really came to paradise. Things weren't always paradise. For some people were better than for others because it depended on what kind of a job you had. And we were in this place working till the end of December, but by December the Russians were leaving, and in January they liberated Auschwitz, and the factories stopped were being bombed, and we couldn't go to the factories. They brought us in 250 Polish women from a ghetto, and of course the Polish women, the Poles suffered many more years than the Hungarians, and there were animosity because we were stupid Hungarians because we should have saved ourselves somehow. The Poles had to suffer so much longer. So anyway, things went on there, and then by the end of January, the month of January, nobody was working, and the rations were very shorter because they didn't bring us food because we weren't working. And then by February 1st, we were chased out from 1,000 women out because they brought 500 Hungarian women in their civilian clothes straight from a ghetto. And now we are marching out. Of course, by this point, we also had winter clothes because to go to the factories, we had to have warm jackets and coats, but they brought us those from that they took away from us originally, that was left in Auschwitz. They sent us clothes, warm clothes, sweaters and coats, but every jacket had a diamond cut out from the back, so in case somebody tries to escape, should be recognized as an escapee from a camp. Anyway, now February 1st, we were marched out from Christianstadt, and we were on the march for 5 weeks. Soldiers, SS soldiers on horseback were riding ahead, and to find a place for the night, because during the night you couldn't march. Every night they found a farmer who put us up in a barn and gave us some food, the same as they gave their pigs. And we were marching like this every day in this horrible weather. People who didn't have good shoes on their feet, they were having rags and they were slipping down hills and sitting by the side of the road and being shot. Every day, at least 8-10 people are being shot because they couldn't walk anymore. There was a mother and 2 daughters, my best friend. They were trying to lift and carry their mother, but they couldn't. So the mother sat down by the side of the road and she was shot. Things went on. Every day was so terrible. One Sunday morning, we were marching through a village and the church bells were ringing, and there was a very dignified funeral. And I was eating myself up. How come there's still some humanity someplace, but we are not treated like humans? Anyway, we didn't march fast enough, and they didn't find any more barns. At one point, they had to put us up in a resort hall. It was so cold. It was freezing in February, and they put us, and they heated up the big hall, and it was warm, and we didn't dare taking off our clothes because it was going to be stolen. So we were in this hot room for the night, for the whole night, and we got lice infested. In the morning when we came out from this place, they were giving us some hot tea, but if the tea dripped down our chin, it froze like icicles. It was so cold. And then we were marching down a hill and people were sliding back and forth, and they were falling over each other because it was high up on the hill. And then we didn't march fast enough away from the liberating Russians. So they had to put us on boxcars again. And we were traveling in these boxcars, crowded in 80 people or so, without any food or anything. We were traveling for 5 nights and 6 days. And all we could do in the boxcars were eating the lice from our hair and from our clothes. We didn't get any food. And then the 6th day we arrived in a place that was worse than all the other places. We arrived in Bergen-Belsen, which was really hell. That's why we meet in hell. The British liberators came to Bergen-Belsen and met up with us in hell. It was a terrible time. When they opened up the boxcars, people died in those boxcars, and there was this welcoming committee in Bergen-Belsen, young men in striped uniforms. You couldn't recognize them if it was your father or your brother or anybody, because they were all walking skeletons. You can count the teeth through the skin and the bones through the clothes. Walking skeletons. They were telling us where to go, pointing us to come deep into Bergen-Belsen. And first they told us there were the big holes, what do you call it? And they had not cubicles, but shelves, rows of 3 tiers of shelves. I was always a climber. I took off my shoes and climbed up to the top shelf. In the middle of the night, the top shelf collapsed, and the people and those from the top shelf, we flew into the next row of the lower shelf, but I lost my shoes, and the people under the second shelf and the third shelf were crying because they were crushed, but I was sitting under the shelf, the lower shelf, till the sun came up so I could find my shoes, because I wasn't going to part with my shoes. Next day, they put us into a different hall, a different barrack, and luckily I found a spot next to the wall, because most of the people were maybe 900 people, there were 850 people in a hall that was only big enough for 100, and everybody was sitting in the middle of the hall or wherever they could, but I was lucky I had a spot next to the wall, and my sister, my friends, and we could lean our backs to the wall because we were all suffering. And this went on, very little food in Bergen-Belsen. We went around scavenging in the kitchen. There was nothing. The Germans were running away and left us with very few Germans, but mostly Hungarian soldiers who were watching over us. And the Hungarian soldiers were just as mean as the Nazis, because they were trained to be like that. There was a mound, and under the mound there were some potatoes. And some of us girls tried to go and dig out some potatoes, and the soldiers were shooting at us. We were so starved and so hungry. There was no water, there was nothing, there was no sanitary condition. People got sick and they died in the barracks every day. Every day, dozens of dead were brought out from the barracks, and trucks came around, and we threw the dead bodies on the trucks, just like cords of wood. Finally, there were nobody else, no more trucks, and those who could still walk had to drag dead bodies to the mass grave. My sister and I, we had to drag dead bodies by the ankles through the dust and dirt to a mass grave. At one time, I pointed out to my sister, look, this girl, she has her mouth and her eyes open. And my sister said, that's a sign that she wanted to live. I said, yes, we all want to live, but I don't think we are going to survive. And even if we survive, we are not going to be human beings anymore. And this went on for a while, and things were very bad because people were dying like flies. Everybody was sick. Those who were there more than a week were in terrible condition. I was there for 4 weeks, and things were getting worse. Finally, the German commandant of the camp found out that the British are not far away. So they went to give up the camp because they were worried. The camp commandant was worried that people are going to break out and they're going to spread diseases to the villagers and to the British, whatever, whoever. And so they gave up the camp, and the British came in. Brigadier General came in, and he didn't know what he was going to do. All the horrors of war. To meet the Brigadier General, he was a doctor for the British soldiers in the First War, and he volunteered to be a doctor for the British soldiers in the Second War. But when we came into Bergen-Belsen, to meet in hell, he came into Bergen-Belsen. He didn't know how is he going to save those dying people. What is he going to do with those mass graves? What is he going to do with his huts? It was they tried their best to save as many. They tried to, the British soldiers tried to share their rations. And if anybody was eating, they died right away because their stomachs were so shrunk they couldn't digest any kind of food. They did other things. The Germans had cut off the water system, and they reconnected the water, and they set up showers, and they did other good things. They were going to set up some tents for girls who could still walk, to get out from the back of the barracks. And they said 5 girls could get a tent. So the 3 sisters, and my sister and I, we've always marched 5 in a row. We got a tent. And the older girl made a rule that every night is going to be another girl's turn to close the flap of the tent. By the 3rd day, it was raining and I was very weak. I had fever, and my sister said I couldn't do it. So my sister said, I'm going to do it instead of her. She was going to do it instead of me. But the older girl says, she made a rule, if I couldn't do my duties, I have to go back to the barracks. So I crawled back to the barracks and wanted to get my spot next to the wall because my back was aching. I had tuberculosis, which I didn't know then, but my back was aching very badly. I was beat up by the girls. I went unconscious. All through the war, I was never beaten by the Kapos or the SS because I always followed orders and worked very hard. And now I was beaten up by my own. I don't blame them because we are not human anymore. I was beat up, I went unconscious. And from then on, I just didn't know what happened to me. But the British medical students came into the barracks. They had to wear rubber boots because it was so much muck all over there that they had went around and checked everybody to see if they had some life and they might still be saved. And they made a mark on the forehead on those who still might be saved. So they must have made a mark on me, and they took me to the human laundry. They made a human laundry to wash off those that they took out from the barracks, from whatever they had the horses. The horses used to be there. They made it into a human laundry, and they had those German Nazis, German women, kapos, wash us, and British soldiers went up and down the human laundry to make sure that they didn't hurt us. So after I was washed off, I came to for a second, I was alive. I didn't know anything more. They put me in a clean sheet. They put me in the room with 11 girls, 11 dying girls. Every morning, 11 girls died, and subconsciously, I just wanted to live because I knew that my sister is relatively well and she's looking for me. It went on for 3 weeks. It was such a commotion going on in Bergen-Belsen that nobody knew where anybody was taken or where they were. Finally, after 3 weeks, my sister finally finds me. I was still semi-conscious. She must have been very happy I was still alive. I don't remember if I was happy because I was still very out of it. And she went to the village and she brought me some scallions, and I started to chew the scallions as soon as I woke up in the morning, and I got an appetite, and I could even crawl down to the night tables where the girls didn't touch their food because they died during the night. Every morning they brought in 11. That was a nurse told me that I was so lucky that I survived. One day when I sat up in my bed because I was a little bit stronger, she said, "You are so lucky you are survived, but all those other girls died." Yes, I said, how lucky am I? I lost my parents, I lost my home, I lost all my relatives except for my sister, and I lost my health because for the next 10 years, 5 of it I spent in hospitals and rehab. So, but I'm lucky to be alive.
Wow.
I'm lucky that I survived.
I was going to tell you that thank you so much for telling this story. I think it's a lot to take, a lot to think about for us. So I wanted to say that at first I think it's amazing that the words of your parents, those words, they help you, right, to survive. The words your dad told you that you are strong, you're going to survive, and the words of your mom too, that she advised you to keep near your sister. I know that's one of the reasons that you survived, and I think that's amazing. Another thing I was going to say is that I'm glad you explained us about the thing of the tattoo, that you weren't tattooed because you were Hungarian, and there were that group that wasn't tattooed, because I have heard that sometimes there is people that said, oh, you weren't in Auschwitz because you don't have a tattoo, you know, and they have that idea that okay, if you don't have a tattoo, you weren't in Auschwitz. But thank you for that explanation, because you are a witness of what happened, and you were there even if you weren't tattooed. That was anything, you know. But yes, thank you for explaining that. And I was going to ask you, why do you think you and your sister were selected to work, even if you were so young, you know? Because sometimes, yeah, girls or boys from 15, 16, they didn't make it, you know?
It's amazing. Somebody says that the SS men in Auschwitz was asking, how old are you? They didn't ask me how old you are. Suppose if you said you are under 15, then you are going to go automatically to the crematorium. Nobody asked me that. But later on, when I had to lie that I was 16 years old, but I celebrated my 15th birthday in the camp, and then my 16th birthday in the hospital. So anyway, I'm still here. I'm past 91 now, and I'm happy to be alive. I really went through a lot. I had some lucky breaks to come to the United States of America. It was a very lucky break. It's a story in itself. After in Bergen-Belsen, after I was getting out of the hospital there, the Swedish Red Cross came in and took 7,000 survivors who were sick mostly to take them to Sweden. I guess I felt guilty because they helped the Germans during the war and they weren't in the war themselves. So they took in, and I lived in Sweden for almost 10 years. When I could, I was working. When I went to school. And when I had to support myself, it wasn't easy because I couldn't get just any kind of work. I got to work first they sent me, I was in the hospital for a long time, and then they sent me to a different hospital, to a real sanitarium in Arvika, high up in Sweden. And I stayed there till June or July. And then my sister, unfortunately, when we got to Sweden, we didn't come on the same ships even. We came separately, and we wound up in different hospitals because we were too young. We didn't know how to advocate for ourselves. So they sent us on different ships to Sweden. But we started to write to each other and call each other on the telephone. And at one point, my sister wrote, she was getting stronger faster than I. So she wound up to go to a school, to a internat school, because the Swedish government demanded that all the children under 18 should go to school. So she wound up in one of those internat schools, which was a wonderful thing. She wrote to me, you have to come here. So after I was in the hospital and in rehab, I wound up in this school, which was a wonderful place because all the teachers there were also Holocaust survivors, and they were trying to teach the young students with a lot of care and love, and tell them that not all grown-ups are monsters, and they were treating us nice. You don't have to come to class if you don't feel like it, but of course we wanted to because we had to catch up on schooling. As a matter of fact, I had to leave school when I was 12 years old because my father was taken away and my mother had needed me home. Yeah, life was hard, and I went to
I think
school.
I
And
have.
What was the question?
Oh no, I was going to say that I have the photos of you in Sweden, right? The ones that you are working for a hospital.
Yeah, first December. Yes, this was my real job. I worked there for almost 2 years. Then I got sick there, and then I became a patient there also. I was working in the operating room, and of course, this is a hospital for tuberculosis, and I had tuberculosis, so I could only work in a hospital. I was strong enough to work, but then I got sick because the stress of seeing all those operations. I had to work in the operating room and seeing what they did to the patients there, taking all the ribs from their back and walking lopsided. Of course, they were better. They survived, but they were still in bad shape after the operation. And I was always worried that I'm going to be operated on too. That's why it was so stressful, and I got sick. I got sick in the hospital Then they sent me to rehab, and I didn't get well enough, so I had to come back in the hospital itself to be a patient there for 6 months. And then I didn't want to go back to work anymore in the hospital. I was hoping to go to Palestine, where all my friends went to at that time. But when I went for a checkup, they told me Israel, Palestine needs strong women, they're strong girls that cannot, they didn't want me to go. And the doctor who examined me, he says, you look so sad, you look like you are carrying the world on your shoulders. You have to start laughing a little bit. But I was always very serious. Said, you have to go and see movies like with Charlie Chaplin or the Three Stooges, you have to laugh. And so I stayed closer to the city, and I got a job outside of Stockholm, so I could go to movies and laugh a little bit. And it was a good thing. I was working at that point in a factory, and I worked in the factory for almost 2 years also. And it was hard work, and I was practically the first women's labor because I complained. I was working on an assembly line doing the same work as the men are doing, and I got the third of the salary as they did. So I went to the foreman and complained, how come I get so little money and the others get so much more for the same work? And he says, well, young ladies don't have to work, get so much money, because when they go out, the boyfriends teach them, and the older man, the married man, they have to support a family. So why do you need money? But I had to live so frugally. I had to live on pasta and potatoes and lard, whatever, very cheap food, so I could save up some money to buy some decent clothes, decent shoes or dress, whatever. But it was very tough to be not completely healthy and not to have a family and to be poor. And yeah, it was rough life. It was a rough life for me. But I tried to improve myself whenever I could. I was taking classes. And when I had an opportunity, I went to another school. The first school was this internet school, and later on I went to high school and to business school. And when I was in rehab, I was taking correspondence courses. I just missed out so much on my education, but I tried to improve myself whatever I could.
Wow. Yes, and after that, how did you you moved to the US?
Yes, that's a story in itself, because my sister, she got married to a guy from Poland, and he was also a survivor, and he had a brother who was also a survivor, but he went to America. And anybody who has a brother outside of America could bring in his brother. If you have a relative here, you can bring in another relative. So of course the brother who lived here wanted to bring out his brother from Sweden with his wife. And my sister had to leave me behind in Stockholm, and we were very unhappy to be separated. So my sister, she said, she promised, within a year's time, I'm going to bring you to America. And I thought to myself, that is like a dream. How could that happen? So, well, it did happen, because my sister promised she's going to bring me out within a year's time, and she did, because as soon as she came to this country, she went to a Purim party, and she met there some girls that we were together in the same concentration camp. And of course, they recognized each other, and then they asked about me, and my sister went and she took out a picture. She showed, this is my sister, how she looks now. It was almost 10 years later when we were together, and they said that they have a brother who's still single. And a light went up in my sister's head, and she said, oh, he's still single? Maybe we can bring them together. Maybe they could start writing to each other. And we wrote to each other for about 5 months. He said, yeah, maybe if I come to Canada, he's going to come to see me there. But I wasn't allowed to come to Canada either, because of being born in Romania. My quota wasn't good. And I wrote a very sad letter and to my future husband. I didn't know it was going to be a husband. I wrote a very sad letter, and my sister went over to my future husband and says, listen, you are here in America already 5 years. You are a citizen, and you work so hard. You never took a vacation. Why don't you go to Sweden and marry her there? And that's what he did. And he came to Sweden and married me after 5 days being in Stockholm.
That's the photo,
So
right? The
yeah,
picture.
yes, that's my first picture with my husband together. We look like quite a nice couple, didn't we?
Yes, you seem like a beautiful couple, you know. So yeah, you're so beautiful. He's so handsome. So yes, I think I
Yes,
have this photo of you when you were
Oh,
like, older.
yes,
But
yes. This was when he was 65. I mean, many years later. By now, I mean, I had 58 years, 58 and a half wonderful years with my husband. He passed away when he was almost 90.
wow,
And yeah, we have two daughters. I was very lucky I could have children. And I also have three grandchildren and by now five great grandchildren. And I'm
wow.
very happy to be in this country. We worked very hard together. And I worked with my husband first. And I went, we went on a vacation together. It was nice to have those little girls. It was really wonderful. But now I have five great grandchildren, and unfortunately, I cannot see them very much because of coronavirus. All
Of
I could say
course.
is we all have to have resilience and hope that this is going to pass and things are going to get better because we are living through in a very rough time right now. Things are not very good all over the world, and I have a feeling it's not going to get better for a while. We have to be realistic.
Yes, but hearing your story, it gives us hope. That okay, maybe we are going through this difficult situation, but there is always hope, and that's why I want to ask you this. Um, like, how did well, I know how you survive, but did you have like faith on something, or how did you survive?
I came from a relatively religious family, Orthodox, and I used to say, even in Auschwitz, I said my night prayers by myself and my morning Modiani, I said my prayers. And I always hoped, I always hoped for better times. I had a lot of hope. I think hope is one thing that we all have to have. Things are going to get better. I wanted to live. I wanted because I didn't want to disappoint my father. He had confidence in me that I'm going to make it, and he was wonderful. We had a very good relationship. I had a very good relationship with my parents because I was always very helpful with the children and with my father in the business, and it came in handy for me. I was helping my husband in the business also, and after he gave up his business, I went to work for Bloomingdale's, which I worked. Bloomingdale's, a very famous store here. I worked there for 28 and a half years. I got a gold watch after 25, and I still get my double discount. And my grandchildren love to shop there.
Wow, yes, thank God you survived. I think you are here for a reason, you are fulfilling your purpose, telling your story, giving us hope. Even if, yes, I said we are in difficult situation like in all the world, but thank you so much. And I just have, yes, I wanted to say that obeying your parents made you survive, right, in some way. So that's awesome too. And I just want to make another question, and then I will give some time if, yeah, we have some questions in the chat so people can ask you. But yeah, the last question, well, not last question, but the question I want to ask you now is that did you ever go back to visit your hometown, or the concentration camps or something?
No, I didn't. My daughters went back 2 years ago to my hometown. Of course, they went before to the concentration camps and everything, but they went back to my hometown. And what do they see? Elie Wiesel, who wrote this famous book, Night, his home is now made into a museum. And they go there and they see this picture on the wall in his house in the museum. And they were very surprised to see it. And there was on the other side of the picture, it says, with love to my best friend, something like that. And there it was a picture. I didn't know how it got there. I gave it to a friend of mine who went to Palestine, and she gave it to the museum. And now it's there. I didn't go, but my daughters went. But 3 years ago, we went on a cruise, and I spent 3 days in Stockholm. And as a matter of fact, I'm still writing to a friend in Stockholm. I'm still in touch. We are emailing each other all the time. And I just told her that I'm going to send her a book because she sent me 2 books that her sister wrote. So anyway, I didn't go back to my hometown. If anybody has any questions, I would be happy. You are a very smart young lady. I'm surprised. Really, you are very intelligent. Yes,
Thank
good
you.
questions.
Thank you so much. Yes, I want to show your book. We're going to send the link in the chat if anyone wants to read your book. I haven't the opportunity to read it yet because it was, so fast that we scheduled this interview and all of this. But yes, that's the book of Ruth's life. If you want to read it more in detail, and we're going to send in the chat the link in Amazon if you want to read it. But okay. Yes, before the questions, I wanted to take a picture because we always take a picture of the meeting, because you have like many young people here and adults too, but they are not showing their faces. Come on, guys, show your face. We're going to take a photo right now. If you can turn on your camera, it will be awesome. Please do it because we want to have this memory, in a photo. So yes, please turn on your cameras. We are 47 people right now here. I think most of us, we are from Mexico, and others from US. We have from Poland too. So yes, turn on your cameras if you can.
Let's see. I'm trying to
Okay.
see if the
I
camera
think I
comes on.
am, yes, I'm just waiting a little bit for more people can turn on their cameras. Maybe I will ask for turning on. Okay. Okay, I will take the photo. So, smile. 1, 2,
Okay, nice. Okay.
3. Okay, wait a little bit because we are a lot of people here, and I have to take another photo. Okay, so smile. 1,
Okay.
2.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You can take a picture of me? Very interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You can watch later this photo in my Facebook page. But
Okay.
yes, thank you everyone that is turning on your camera. If you can keep it like that, it's awesome, because Ruth can see that we have a lot of people here, some adults, some young people. So yeah, it's amazing. And before telling you guys to ask some questions, I wanted to say also that we are honored here to have Ruth and also Johnny. Well, he has the name of Zoom like Lenovo, but he's here again. He's also a survivor. He was in 6 camps. He also was in Auschwitz, actually. Um, we can listen to you, Johnny. Okay, I can. Okay, so yeah, ask you for turning on your microphone. We have Johnny, and also we have Eddie Bickels with his parents that they are survivors too here listening to us. Norbert, I think. Oh, Johnny, now we can listen to you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Anyway, I want to thank you, Sam, for your wonderful job. And we need more people like you. And I see my friend Simon Del Alto, right? Yeah, he follows me on the Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
This is the first time I see him.
Yes, nice to meet you, Johnny.
Yeah, yeah. And do your work, eh? Do as much as you can. We really appreciate you. We need more people like you. Thank you very much, sweetheart.
No, thank you, Johnny, for being here. It's amazing to have 2 survivors here reunited, right? Like the other time, and you were in the same camp in Auschwitz, Ruth and you. So, wow, I don't know if you want to tell something to Ruth, to say something.
Well, I was in Auschwitz for 1 year, but I was in Auschwitz 1. And I was very lucky that I find work in the hospital. I was working as a male nurse, and then anyway, half of the time I was very bad, and half of the time I was quite good. I used to help many people. And nice to meet you, Ruth.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you too. Yes, Some of the time was good and some of the time was not so good, but the good times carried us through the bad times.
Yeah.
I think it helped us to survive Auschwitz. I was only about 3 months in Auschwitz, but it was every day was like a year, like a lifetime, most of the time.
Yeah, Sam asked a very good question. How did we survive? There's only one answer: luck.
Luck. There's no answer.
Only luck.
Yeah.
That you turn left instead of turning to the right. That the day was raining was not no such thing as being able to survive. There is no such thing.
Just luck. Nobody can really answer really why did they survive and all those other thousands didn't. I mean, it's very tough. We were lucky.
Only that's the only answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe somebody there upstairs look after me. I don't know.
We don't know. We don't know. We weren't any better or any smarter.
I don't believe it.
I don't know. We weren't any different. We weren't any smarter, any more good looking, nothing. We weren't any more religious. It's just luck. There, yeah.
I have a big fight with the guy upstairs.
I don't fight. I don't fight because he knows best. He knows best.
You know, I think that, yeah, it's kind of a blessing, of course, that you survived. Yeah, well, you said that you don't know why you survived, or if there is anyone up there, you know, but I was thinking that other interview that I made to a survivor that she's called Eva Perlman, she was telling us that, well, she, like, personally, she believes that, yeah, obviously, to survive, it was thank to God, you know, and someone was asking that, saying that sometimes people blame God, you know, about this, like, oh, how could you allow this happen, you know, all this death, all this terrible stuff. But Eva was saying that, she said, yes, I think that most of the people blame God because of this, but I don't blame him. I think that we as humans have this choice to be good or to be bad, you know. So I think, yes, unfortunately, all the bad stuff that happens, mostly it's because of the decisions we've made, you know, and that's why innocent people pay, and that's so bad. But yes, thank you so much, Johnny, for talking to. I think we have here also Mr. Bicales, that he's going to talk to us in another interview, hopefully. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to say something, you are free to say something. But thank you so much. And
well, I don't think my father has on his microphone right now, but I know that my parents, I'm very fortunate to have both my parents, and they do enjoy telling their stories. So I'm sure that at a future time they'll be able to do so. Their story is not as dramatic. They were not in the camps, but they were on the run and in hiding, and there's plenty to tell. So I'll talk to you about that.
There are lots of questions, but not enough answers for all the questions. Yeah, everybody who survived, who ran away from Germany earlier, they were the lucky ones, but they were also survivors because they had to leave everything behind. Yeah.
yes.
Anyway.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And okay, so we will have this time for questions. I think we have questions here in the chat. So, okay, I'm searching for them because we have a lot of things here, but yeah. Simon wants to ask you something. Simon, do you want to turn on your microphone, or do you want me to ask the question?
Yes.
Okay, me. Okay, Simon has a question for you. That is, did you or your family know Dr. Gisela Perl? She was also from Sihet.
Yes. Yes, I don't remember we knew her from home, but I know that she's from Siget and she tried to save women in Auschwitz and what she went through in this country. Yes, I read her book, Gisela. Yes, she was. Yeah, there were some famous people from our hometown who survived.
Well, yes, thank you for answering.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have a comment. Well, it's a comment here from Ron. Well, it's just a comment. He says, if the SS were so educated, they would have appreciated the educated Jews rather than murder them. Yes. I don't know, Ron, if you want to say something else, or well, I just read your comment, sorry. But yes, you're true. You're right. You're right.
Can I make
Okay.
a statement?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Well, I used to hate. I used to hate so much that used to eat me alive, and I don't hate anymore. Hate is a poison. We should not hate. We only should never forget, and never should happen again. And the key is only education. We, Ruth, and some others, we have to talk about it. We have to talk to the kids, mostly to the kids. As a matter of fact, I have quite a few engagements with the kids. It's too bad that I cannot go with them to March of Living. Anybody heard about March of Living?
Of course.
Yeah. So I used to go every year, and we miss them. But we make something alternative. The next week I have a few engagements with the kids, and you have to talk about it. You have to educate them. The answer,
Yeah,
the key is education. Thank you.
exactly. Thank you, Johnny. That's why we are doing this, you know. Yeah, we are 40 persons in this meeting, but we are like 15 or I don't know, people my age, you know, like 20 something. We are young and we're learning from you. So thank you so much. Okay, I think we have another question from Marcos from Spain. Do you want to turn on your microphone?
Yes. First of all, thanks for raise up your voice. Young people need to listen about and learn to the past. What did you think about people that are outside the camps? Did you know what happens inside, or they just ignore?
I didn't understand the question. Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I mean that if you, what do you think about people that live near the extermination camps if they know what is happening here inside the camp?
I still don't know the question.
I think the question that he's asking is, around all the camps, there were residents that knew what was going on, and yet most of the time they didn't do anything. They looked the other way, whatever. Do you have any thoughts about that? I think that's the question, correct?
I just know that the free world, United States and Great Britain, they knew what was going on in Auschwitz. They knew what people are being killed like on Kristallnacht, and nothing was done. I don't think they went on marches like they do nowadays for certain causes. They didn't do anything. There was nobody who were interested in trying to help the Jewish people. Of course, not just Jews died in Auschwitz. They also discriminated against the Gypsies, the Roma, and the gays, you know, and also they killed their own people who wasn't in perfect shape or who wasn't had any kind of disability. The Germans killed their own people by the thousands. They gassed them also. Yes, I mean Germany. It's just amazing that yes, they had it very bad. They lost the First World War, and the economy was very bad after the war, after the First World War, and they had to have a scapegoat. And of course, the Jews are easy targets. So, and then when Hitler came to power, he just hated the Jews. He said it was our fault that their economy is bad and they lost the war. And they were just after killing all the Jews.
I want to say something. I blame the whole world.
Yeah.
I remember in Auschwitz, it was October 1944. two plane camps, and we see it. There were American planes, and they were circle around the crematorium, and we yelled to them, "Bomb the thing, bomb!" No, they just take around one and two, and they left. Two bombs. You know how many people they could save if they would bomb the crematorium?
Yeah.
I never forget them. I never gonna forgive them for that.
Well, President Roosevelt was a wonderful president, but his priorities were not to save the Jews. He wanted to end the war only. The Jews were never a priority in this country. So anyway, too many people died for no good reason, just because they were born Jews. Yeah, war is horrible, and we have to look out. We have to just look out. There shouldn't be anything bad happening again, because anything could happen again. We have to look out. It shouldn't happen again. We have to speak up, and I'm very hopeful that this younger generation is more like for helping out others and learning about what things are going on. And yeah, the younger population from 1995 to 2020, these young people are more aware of what's going on, and they want to know more, and they speak up more, and they are more helpful and volunteering more than the older generation. So I'm very hopeful things are going to improve.
Thank you so much for answering that. And yeah, as I said, that's why we are doing this. I'm so happy to have you here to share your story. Here in the meeting, I have some friends from my school, from other places, and I think this is so special and so important for us to value what we have, and to never forget what happened, so it never happened again. So yes, I think Isaac is going to say something.
Yes. Thank you, first of all, Johnny and Ruth and Eddie. First of all, I want to thank that we have here, you talk about education and communication to the new generation. We have here somebody of a very important museum in Mexico, the Tolerance and Memory Museum. It's one of the most important it has become. It talks 50 of the museum, 50% of the museum, it's about Holocaust, and the other 50% it's about tolerance and other genocides that have been. It's a very important mission they do. He's one of the directors in the museum. He's here, and he wants me to ask you, because it's very important for them, for Ruth. He sent me a message for you. He says, Ruth, you are an inspiration. Your story is amazing. I was wondering if you could tell us if there was any economical or social restitution from the German government after you left Bergen-Belsen, or did anyone approach to you or to your sister to help you after being liberated or being out of the camp?
Well, I have to say, the Germans are trying to live up to their promise. I do get a small pension from them every month. And the Swedish government was very good to survivors. They tried to put them on their feet again. They became sick there. They tried to educate them and make them well, put them on their feet. So the Swedish people were good. The German people, of course, just after the war, there are lots of atrocities going on still. There are, other kind of what do you call it, ethnic cleansing and all kinds of horror still going on. But the German people are living up to they're also very good to Israel. And yeah, they changed a lot, and especially the younger generation. They try to be helpful, and hopefully, there is also lots of neo-Nazis, and it's all over the world, lots of anti-Semitism still going on, but we have to hope for the best. Speak up. Young people have to speak up when they think that is not fair, that is not right. And I think most young people nowadays do speak up when they see things that is not right.
Thank you, Ruth. Yes, I think we should speak up about this and about all the things that are not fair, in the world, and this is a lesson to us. Yes, and talking about lessons, Eddie had another question here in the chat about the lessons of the Holocaust. Do you want to ask it, Eddie?
Sure. My question is just, what do you see as the lessons of the Holocaust?
Lessons of the Holocaust. That we are all human and we have to try to not to have let it happen again. It was a terrible thing that people, neighbors, friends looked up and let it happen, and we shouldn't let it happen. The lesson is that we have to speak up. In Germany or also in Hungary and other European countries, they just stood by and didn't speak up, and we cannot let that happen again. If you see something that's wrong, you speak up, don't let it happen. Of course, it still happens in many countries, discrimination and yeah, but we have to be alert to the things. I just have hope that the younger generation is going to be more alert and speaking up.
Much. I think, yes, as we were saying, it's so important to speak up and never forget what the horrors that happen in stories and history, so we don't repeat them. We have another question of, well, I don't know his or her name because in Zoom it says Android Blue Droid, but he or she has a question. If you want to open your microphone, or I can read it, but I don't know. Okay. I don't know if, okay, I can ask you for turning on your microphone, but if not, I'm going to read your question. Don't worry. Okay. Okay, well, this person says, Ruth, after all these years, your memory is impeccable in every detail. How to heal your heart? Ah, okay. Do you want to ask it, or okay, anyone? How to heal your heart with all those painful memories? What process did you go through in your adult life, like for healing, all this stuff?
Well, I always was an optimist, and I always don't let things bother me very much. I try to work and study and make the best of everything. I don't let things depress me, and I think I'm very resilient, and I try to do good whenever I can, helpful to others, and I'm just not a pessimist. I don't let the past follow me all around, and I don't go around with hate in my heart, because hate will just eat me up, and I just don't hate anybody. I just feel that everybody has something good in them anyway. Not so much the Nazis, because the Nazis were trained to be so inhuman that they were really treated other people like worse than animals. The Nazis were trained to be very inhuman. There were no really good Nazi.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah. Someone wanted to say something? Or I don't know what happened.
Was me, Sam. Was me the question. Thank you so much, Ruth, for all the time.
Thank you very much for listening. I think it was very nice that you got together a nice group of people who are interested to listen about the Holocaust, and it's something that we should all know. Everybody should know about it. Unfortunately, there are lots of people, even college-educated people, who don't know about the Holocaust. They don't know about the different concentration camps. They don't know what happened, and we have to enlighten people, because we should never forget.
Yes, it's important. Don't lose all this information.
Thank you very much.
Yes, actually, she's my teacher from university, so it's important for me to
Very
hear
nice.
you too. Okay, I think, let me see if, okay, Isaac wants to say something. Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, and Johnny also, did you meet somebody that were that were with you at the concentration camps, and what happened there? There are two questions. One is, what happened when you meet with somebody that was also with you, if you have somebody to find? And the other question is more, what you do when somebody tells you, or you hear somebody telling that Holocaust didn't exist?
It's hard to convince those who believe that that there was no Holocaust. It's hard to convince them, but listen, they don't want to know, or they know and they want to deny it. As far as me meeting other Holocaust survivors, there are very few, but I was very lucky. I married a husband who had 5 surviving siblings, and my children always had aunts and uncles and cousins on account of it. They didn't have grandparents, but they had cousins and aunts and uncles. And yeah, 3 of my sister-in-laws were with me in the same concentration camp, so we had something in common. Anyway, as far as meeting somebody nowadays, it's very hard. One of third generation, a granddaughter, read my daughter's book and she was blown away. She could see that her grandmother was born in the same town and went through the same concentration camp as me. And so she gave me her telephone number. I should call up her grandmother. Unfortunately, she's the same age as me, or maybe a year younger even. And she is hard on hearing, and she doesn't. The only thing that we could remember about both of us is I remember the street that she lived on, and she remembered the street that I lived on, but we didn't really know each other from home. But it would be very nice to meet somebody that went through the same thing with me and still alive. I don't think anybody is still alive.
I like to ask, I have one answer to the Holocaust deniers. I said, you know what? I hope that they will write that Holocaust never exists, that I have a bad dream and I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna be surrounded by my family, but it didn't happen so. Giving back my family, and I will tell you the Holocaust didn't exist. They know that Holocaust exists. They only sorry that I'm alive, that I survived, that I can tell you it happened.
Yeah, we have to talk, and I'm glad that so many young people are interested. I still go around speaking. I mean, I do now on Zoom. As a matter of fact, I spoke on Zoom last night, I spoke on Zoom the night before, and I spoke on Kristallnacht commemorating last Monday. And I'm speaking to my daughter now that she's advertising her book. She goes around on speaking engagement on Zoom, and I join in with her because they want to ask me questions also. And I do through the Holocaust Center here on Long Island. We have a very nice Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center. And through them, people get the PowerPoint, and I tell my story to groups of students, high schoolers mostly. I don't want to speak to children under 12 or 13 years old, but I do speak a lot, and thank God I could still hear, I could still speak, and I thank God every day that I'm alive. It's hard for me now that I cannot see my grandchildren, my children, because of Zoom, because of the virus, and it's very rough. I'm very realistic. I don't think that the coronavirus is going to disappear very soon, and this is a very bad thing right now, that we have this bug that is killing so many people and making so many so very sick. I think if I get sick, I don't want to survive it, because it's lots of pains afterwards also.
Now that you are talking about this, what would you tell us, because you lived all those horrors in the past, and maybe now many people it's complaining that, oh, I have to stay home, or what would you say to us?
I just say they should be resilient and should be kind to each other and do the best that they can, and have hope that this is going to pass. I know it's very hard to be under lockdown and not to be able to go to classes and not to meet with family, as the extended family. It's very hard during the holidays, but I just say they have to be resilient and hope for a better day.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think hope is what has to move us, to keep going. So thank you. And we have a comment from Leopoldo Leizorek. I don't know if he's here, but he said, my wife's grandmother was Egne Mermelstein. Mermelstein. Well, yeah, as your last name, but I don't know if you knew her or something.
there's quite a lot Mermelsteins in this country also, and in New York and Long Island and even California. But while they're a very large family, none of those other people are related to us. None of those other Mermelsteins are related. Yes, there are lots of Mermelsteins. There are doctors and lawyers and yeah, many people, but none of them are related to us.
Yes, yes, I know. I was confused too, with another Ruth Mermelstein that is a survivor too, but yes.
That's right. Since the book came out, I called myself Rachel because my original name was really Rachel, and that my daughter wrote Rachel Genut. That was my first name, Rachel. So I went back to Rachel because this other Ruth is confusing. It's getting a little bit confused. And my husband gave me Ruth because I had so many names. When I was born in Romania, I got a Romanian name. First, I got a Jewish name, Rachel. And then I got a Romanian name, Regina. And then in Hungarian, I got a Hungarian name, Regina, same spelling, but different pronunciations. And then in Germany, I had a different name, Rosa. Then when I came to Sweden, I was Rosalia. And my husband thought none of those names suited him. So he was going to give me a name, Ruth. And even today, I feel Ruth is very hard for me to pronounce because the TH is very hard to pronounce. So because he had a friend whose wife was named Ruth, so he said, you are going to be Ruth Mermelstein. So I am Ruth Mermelstein officially, but my real name is really Rachel.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Lily says, thank God for the good luck the survivors had. And let me see. Okay, Sarah Robbins, she has a comment. Do you want to tell Ruth the comment, or do you want me to read it? Well, I think I'm going to, okay. You don't have the microphone turned on.
I congratulate you, Ruth, for your willpower of living and your soul and your incredible memory of all the details. And I hope you can spread your work through the non-Jewish community also. So everybody has to know what happened and how to deal with it in life, that you have to go on, keep going. I congratulate you. I send you a big hug. I admire you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I do speak in churches, and I do speak school children of every religion, and they listen to me, and I have a nice feedback from them, and I do my best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for listening to me. You are all wonderful, and I'm grateful that you are interested in this story because everybody should know about it. And the more people know, the better. I hope you taped everything. Samantha, did you tape the show? Samantha.
Did I what? Yes. I have this meeting recorded. I can send it to you, Ruth, but I will send it the link because it's in Facebook. It will be recorded on Facebook.
Thank you very much. Stay well, all of you. And
I have a last question. Just if you know somebody, we have here somebody talking about, just if you know Ruth or Johnny, we have some people here that has made a museum about Holocaust instruments. Yes, musical instruments. Did you know somebody with a musical instrument? They call him the hop instruments here in Mexico. They are doing a good job trying to not forget the Holocaust and remember what happened with the Holocaust through the music and through the musical instrument. Did you know somebody who play, or did you have something to do with any instrument? It would be nice. And just to finish, I would like to know just a last remark from Johnny, from Ruth. What do you want us to get from this, to leave us?
Well, you know that in Auschwitz, they had an orchestra that Jewish people played, supposedly, when they arrived in Auschwitz. The orchestra played. And I listened to some people from Germany who escaped with with two violinists, and they played their violins here in our temple because they managed to escape with their violins before they could when they could still get out from Germany with their violins. So I listened to them playing the German violins. I mean, that survived the war. Anyway, what I could say to people is that we have to be strong and to be resilient and have perseverance and just stay hopeful. That's all. We only just hope and do our best. I don't know if I answered the questions.
Johnny, something to say?
I just want everybody should remember that the Holocaust did exist, and so many people, not just Jewish people, other kind of people also were murdered in Auschwitz and in other places. There were many places in Bergen-Belsen, people died like flies. On the death marches, people died. And yeah, it was a tough time, but I'm glad to be alive. And yes, I'm very happy that I can still hear and see without glasses and walk every day at least a mile, which I'm going to do right now. It's a nice day, so I walk every day a mile and keep myself busy. And I try not to be depressed or feel lonesome or needy. I'm taking care of myself. I have my daughter close by, one who brings me everything that I need and takes me to doctors if I have to go. So I'm very lucky, and I feel myself lucky that I'm still alive and in relatively good health also. Thank you very much all for listening. It was a pleasure for me to speak to you because you are such a wonderful audience.
Son instrumentos.
Yes, thank you so much, Ruth. And okay, we have just a comment here of Juan. Thank you for sharing your story, Ruth. Thank you so much. I think you inspired us, to keep going. And I wanted just the last question I have for you is, what does never again, the quote never again means to you, like personally?
Definitely, never again. It should happen to anybody. Never again should there be such a terrible time as a Holocaust. And of course, there are other atrocities still going on in the world, and we have to speak up about it. Even though it doesn't happen to us right here, we have to speak up and make sure that this doesn't go on. There are other mass murders going on, and it's very hurtful. Of course, each one of us cannot do much, but many of us together maybe would help to speak up, not to have this kind of things going on. Ethnic cleansings and murders and anti-Semitism, and yeah, we have to speak up because unfortunately, if people forget, things start to get bad again, but we cannot forget it and we cannot let it happen again.
Yes, thank you so much, Ruth, for those words that we will keep with us. Just for finishing this meeting, I want to share with you, I always write a poem for the survivor I'm interviewing. So I have this for you. Okay, I'm going to read it.
Thank you very much.
She was so strong and suffering. She was so young and starving, but her parents' words make her survive. She's alive as a witness of a story that never dies. Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thank you so very much. And where did you get that picture?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
In internet. I will send it to you, this poem, okay? So you can have it.
Yes, thank you very much, Samantha. Thank you. You are wonderful, and you are a wonderful interviewer too. And wishing you all the best. Take care.
Thank you so much. If everyone can turn on your camera to say, and microphone to say goodbye and thank you, Ruth. Everyone turn on your cameras.
Thank you, Ruth, for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cam, you're the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, Johnny, too.
Bye, Johnny.
Goodbye, Simon.
Bye, Johnny. Bye.
Johnny,
Bye-bye.
Maya, everyone.
Bye, Johnny. Bye, Ruth.
Bye for
Bye.
all. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.